In 2023, Klarna CEO fired 700 people and publicly declared that AI had made them all unnecessary. He called this the future of work and said that their AI system was saving the company nearly $40 million a year. But just 2 years later, Klarna quietly admitted that their AI wasn't enough and they now employ more people than before the layoffs ever happened. How does the company become the poster child for AI replacing workers and then prove that it doesn't work? To understand that, you need to go back to 2005. I know this is going to sound like a history lesson, but if you're like me, you've probably heard of Klarna, but don't really know what they do or how they got so big. And trust me, the backstory makes the AI layoffs make a lot more sense. I've added timestamps below if you want to skip ahead. In 2005, Sebastian Siemiatkowski dropped out of the Stockholm School of Economics and started Klarna with two co-founders on one simple idea. Just let people buy things online and pay later in installments. And you didn't need a credit card and you didn't pay any interest if you paid on time. And at that time, buying anything online required a credit card and paying up front. Klarna made this whole process frictionless, and the timing couldn't have been better. Interest rates were near zero, which meant lending money cost almost nothing. And e-commerce was exploding, and millennials were actively avoiding credit cards after watching their parents struggle with debt in 2008. By 2021, Klarna had 150 million users across 45 countries and had partnerships with H&M, IKEA, and Sephora. And they became one of the most downloaded apps in the United States, beating Amazon, Walmart, and Target in the App Store. That growth pushed Klarna's valuation to $45.6 billion, making it the most valuable private fintech company in Europe. But remember, the valuation was built on zero interest rates, a pandemic e-commerce boom, and investors who were rewarding growth over profitability. And in 2022, those conditions changed almost overnight. In 2022, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates from near zero to over 5% in less than 2 years, the fastest rate increase in decades. And for Klarna, this was an existential problem. You see, their entire model was built on lending money at near zero cost and collecting payments later. And when rates were near zero, Klarna's financing costs were negligible. But by 2022, those same costs had jumped 58% in a single year. The pandemic spending boom was over and inflation was eating into household budgets. And more customers were missing payments and Klarna was absorbing those losses. And with these losses mounting, Klarna needed fresh capital just to survive. So in July 2022, Klarna raised a new round of funding, but this time the valuation came in at $6.7 billion, down 85% from $45.6 billion just 12 months earlier. And Klarna wasn't alone. Affirm's stock dropped 90% and Afterpay was absorbed by Block at a fraction of its previous valuation, and the entire buy now pay later sector was collapsing. And to cut costs, Klarna laid off 700 employees. And remember, this had nothing to do with AI. This was just purely financial survival. But survival alone wasn't enough. Siemiatkowski needed a new story. In February 2023, Klarna announced partnership with OpenAI and launched an AI customer service assistant. I mean, the timing couldn't have been better. ChatGPT had just become the fastest growing consumer product in history, and every company was scrambling to show that they were AI first. And Siemiatkowski just didn't announce a new product. He made claims that nobody had yet verified, but everyone was eager to believe. He claimed that the AI assistant was doing the work of 700 full-time customer service agents, and apparently it handled 2.3 million customer conversations in its first month alone. And he went on to say that it resolved issues in 2 minutes versus 11 minutes for human agents, and that it was available in 35 languages and supposedly saving Klarna $40 million every single year. And the story went absolutely global. And Klarna went from the company that had just lost 85% of its value to the company that had figured out the future of work. And they weren't the only ones doing this, by the way. Salesforce made identical claims around the same time, and I made an entire video about it on how that played out. I'll link it on the top right here. I recommend you check it out. But Siemiatkowski wasn't just making a product announcement. He was building an investor narrative for Klarna's IPO. The AI efficiency story was central to the argument that Klarna had finally found its path to profitability. I mean, it makes sense, right? Why would investors pay billions for a struggling buy now pay later company? Because it wasn't really a BNPL company anymore. It was an AI-powered fintech that could run on a fraction of the human capital of traditional financial services. And that was the story he was selling, and it worked. And Klarna's valuation started recovering, and the AI story had done exactly what it was supposed to do. To change the narrative. But then the real world results started coming in. And at first, it looked like the claims might actually be true. For simple queries like tracking the order and checking balances, the AI was fast and the 2-minute claim looked accurate. But customer service isn't mostly simple queries. It's disputes, complaints, fraud investigations, and customer who needed empathy, not efficiency. And AI couldn't handle any of it reliably. Customer satisfaction scores dropped measurably, and customers with complex issues found themselves stuck in loops. The AI couldn't solve their problem and couldn't effectively connect them to a human either. By Q3 2023, just 6 months after the bold public announcement, Klarna started quietly rehiring customer service workers. The hybrid model they ended up with required both AI infrastructure costs and human salaries simultaneously. And Klarna was now paying an estimated $8 to $15 million annually in OpenAI API costs on top of the salaries of the workforce that they still needed. The $40 million saving was being eaten from both ends. And Siemiatkowski never corrected the original claims, by the way. He never acknowledged the rehiring nor the $40 million saving figure that made international headlines quietly disappeared from the conversation. And Klarna wasn't alone. In January 2024, Duolingo laid off 10% of its contractor workforce. The reason given was that AI could now write and translate language lessons faster and cheaper than human contractors could. But the quality of what the AI produced told a completely different story. Lessons became repetitive, translations felt off, and the nuance that made Duolingo's lessons actually worked started disappearing, and their user ratings dropped and complaints started piling up. And within months, Duolingo was quietly bringing back human contractors because the AI simply couldn't replicate what they had been doing. Then there was IBM. In May 2023, IBM CEO announced the company would pause hiring for roughly 7,800 roles that AI could replace. And every major business publication ran this story, that AI was finally replacing white-collar jobs at scale, and IBM was the proof. But within a year, IBM's total headcount had actually grown. They were quietly hiring engineers, salespeople, and marketers at the same time the AI replacement headlines were still running. Klarna, Duolingo, IBM, all three made bold public claims about AI replacing workers, and all three quietly reversed course and ended up with the hybrid model that cost more than the original. And the incentive to keep making these claims was enormous. In 2023, any company that announced AI efficiency gains saw its stock react positively. Klarna's valuation recovered, IBM's stock held steady. The market was rewarding the narrative regardless of whether the numbers backed it up. And nowhere was that gap visible more than in Klarna's own financials. Klarna did become profitable in 2024 for the first time, and revenue hit $2.8 billion. But the profitability came from revenue growth and broad cost cuts across the whole business, not specifically from the AI efficiency story Siemiatkowski had been telling the world. Then in July 2025, Klarna went public on the New York Stock Exchange. The IPO valued the company at $14.6 billion, a recovery from the $6.7 billion trough, but still less than a third of the $45.6 billion peak. When a company goes public, they have to file a legal document that tells investors exactly what the business is and how it makes money. And every claim in it gets scrutinized by lawyers, regulators, and investors. So what Klarna chose to say or not say in that document matters a lot. In 2023, Siemiatkowski told the world that AI was doing the work of 700 humans and saving $40 million a year. In the IPO document 2 years later, that same claim had been quietly rewritten into a single careful line about AI assisting the customer service team, with no mention of 700 agents and no mention of the $40 million saving that had made international headlines. And then there was the employee count. At the time of IPO, Klarna had approximately 3,500 employees, higher than the 3,000 they had after the AI layoffs in 2023. The company that had been celebrated as the future of work had quietly become a normal business again. Just one that had fired 700 people for claims that it could fully never back up. And Klarna wasn't necessarily wrong about what AI could do. The 2-minute resolution times, the 35 languages, the scale, those things are increasingly real. The technology is genuinely improving. But the problem was the timeline. They announced the future before it actually arrived, and they used real people's jobs to make that announcement. I mean, look at Salesforce. They fired 4,000 people to prove Agentforce worked, and within months they quietly started rehiring people. Oracle cut 21,000 jobs citing AI efficiency, and Coinbase laid off 14% of its workforce, saying that AI could do their jobs. I mean, AI was responsible for over 87,000 layoffs in the United States in the first half of this year alone, and the pattern across all of them is the exact same. The AI capability is real, but the timeline is always more optimistic than the reality. Companies keep rushing to announce the future before it arrives because the market rewards the announcement and not the delivery. Let me know in the comments below, do you think we're just a few years away from AI replacing customer service workers for real? Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.